Hey, good people. It is Tuesday. Come on in. It's time for Tip Tuesday with Nikidra. If you're watching me on replay, welcome. I don't take it lightly that you are taking time to watch me and my weekly Tip Tuesday, where I give you information and education on ways to get and stay healthy. If you are tuning in and you've seen me before, hello. And if this is your first time, make sure you say hello in the comments and let me know where you are tuning in from, because I'd love to interact with you. So let's get started. It's Tip Tuesday, so as you come on in, make sure you say hello so I can officially welcome you to the broadcast. And for those who are tuning in, I have my props this week. So on last week, there was a glitch in Facebook, and so I didn't have my infamous props. But guess what? On this week, I have them. So y'all give me some comments so I can see if you can see my props, if they are turned facing you. So Tip Tuesday with Nikidra. Excuse me. Let me know if you can see that, if it's facing you. And let me see if my comments are coming through. How y'all doing? Hope you're having an amazing day. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. I know there's a bit of a delay, but Tip Tuesday, is this facing so that you can read it correctly? Last week it was not. So again, just testing to make sure it is facing you. Give me some hearts or some thumbs up, something in the comments so I'll know that I can move forward. Maybe I'm not able to see comments because surely somebody is saying something. All right, here we go. I see them. So welcome to the broadcast. It is Tip Tuesday with Nikidra. Go ahead and let me know if you can see this facing forward. I see yes from Barbara. Thank you. Hey, Donna, come on in. Hey, Barbara. Hey, Shaquita. Y'all come on in. It's time for Tip Tuesday. We're going to talk about acting fast. F.A.S.T. Acting fast. So this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, so I'll probably have to break it up into two separate broadcasts, because I try not to keep you so long on Tuesday, about 10 to 15 minutes, to give you some little tidbits of education to get you on your way. So announcements. Welcome. If you are watching me, make sure you put where you are watching me from. Last time I had some people to meet. They were actually in the same city, didn't even know it. So you never know who is watching. So welcome. I should have cleared my throat before. I'm sorry. Make sure that you pay for watching the broadcast. You know what the cost of attendance to Tip Tuesday is. It's to push that share button and share this out on your news feed. Push the share button and share this out on your news feed so that other people can see it. I want to give a shout out to my Club 550 members, as they are about a month in. They're hanging in there tight. They're getting up. They're working out. Love it. So shout out to them. And also a shout out to the Health and Wellness group. For those of you who are in my inbox, you want to know when we're going to start the Health and Wellness group up again. We're going to start that up again next month. So that's the food and fitness portion of my program. So it's limited access. Y'all got to get in when you fit in. Follow me closely so you can see when we open back up, so you won't be in my inbox asking, all right? So those ladies in the wellness group are still moving and shaking. We got two separate groups going on, but they're both working equally as hard to improve their life and health. So love it. So make sure you also comment and you engage. Hey, Ronisha, I see you. Hey, Keisha, thank y'all for tuning in. So also, you got to comment, you got to engage with me. So that's how I know that you all are hearing, that you're getting the information, and most of all, that you are understanding. You got it? You got it. So May, y'all know Tip Tuesdays typically are surrounded by a topic of interest for the month of May. Last month, we talked about blood pressure, and it was a great lead-in to this month, or this week, which is National Stroke Awareness. So May, wouldn't you know it, is National Stroke Awareness Month. Yes, it is. National Stroke Awareness Month. If you are just hopping in, let me know where you're tuning in from. Say hello as you come on in. And your cost for attendance is to share it out. We're going to talk about acting fast today. It is National Stroke Awareness Month. So for those of you who know me, you know that's, of course, a topic that is of interest to me, and it should be of interest to you because I'm sure you all know somebody who has been affected by a stroke. We're going to get to that a little bit later, but let's talk about what a stroke actually is, because a lot of you hear people saying, oh, such and such had a stroke. You may have even had a stroke. You know somebody who's had a stroke, but do you really know what a stroke is? So a stroke is what happens when blood flow to your brain is stopped. So a portion of your brain is not getting any blood supply. And so if the blood supply is stopped for a short period of time, guess what? You got a problem. Hey, Harold, welcome, welcome, welcome. Your brain cells, they begin to die in just a few minutes if you don't get any oxygen. So when the brain cells die, guess what? You lose function. So that's why you probably know people with strokes who are having problems with movement. They're having problems speaking. They're having problems eating. They can't remember certain things. So you aren't able to do some things that are controlled by your brain if you have a stroke. So now's the time for one. Put a 1 in the comments if you have had a stroke yourself. I have a bunch of stroke survivors who are on my news feed, so I expect to see some 1s for you now. Or if you're watching the replay, last May I actually did a stroke telesummit. So I met people from all over the world who we are still engaged in contact with on Facebook. So it's amazing how many people you can reach who have actually had similar things that you've had. But 1 in the comments if you have actually had a stroke. 2 in the comments, there's my mama, how fitting. 2 in the comments if you know a family member who has had a stroke. So a 2 in the comments if you know a family member who had a stroke. And 3, if you just know a friend or somebody who's not related to you and it wasn't you who's had a stroke. Let me see those numbers come through the comments. Again, y'all make sure you're sharing out the broadcast. We're talking about why you should act fast today. May is National Stroke Awareness Month. And I know that you know, maybe it's you, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a family member, but somebody you know has had a stroke. So 1 in the comments if it's you, a 2 if you've had a family member who's had a stroke, and a 3 if you've had a friend to have a stroke. So you may have answers 1 and 2, 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to see. We're talking about this because many of you've heard about stroke, but you don't really know what it is. Tammy, I see you hopping in the broadcast. We're talking about it being National Stroke Awareness Month. You're putting a 1 in the comment, 2, and I see you with your 3 because we know we have shared personal stories. And so thank you for hopping in. Make sure you let your husband see this news feed or this broadcast. There are 2 different types of stroke. There's an ischemic stroke and there's a hemorrhagic stroke. Most of the time, people just say that somebody had a stroke and then somebody had a bad stroke. Like that's the way lay people just seem to kind of categorize them. Somebody had a stroke and he had a bad stroke. So a stroke or regular stroke, an ischemic stroke is the most common kind. So that happens when the blood vessel that we talked about earlier in the brain is blocked. So it can be blocked by a blood clot, it can be blocked by cholesterol, it can be blocked by some type of buildup or something that is blocking off a vessel in your brain. The other is a hemorrhagic, or you're bleeding in the brain. So something causes a vessel in your brain to burst, and so you start bleeding in your brain. This builds up some pressure, and so that pressure is what actually causes the damage. So the important thing that you should know and take away is, if you don't know and you don't remember anything else, is this. I want you to put anyone in the comments. Make sure you put anyone in the comments. Anyone can have a stroke. Anyone can have a stroke. Nobody wants to be that one, but anyone can actually have a stroke. So it's not just an old person problem. It's not something that happens when people don't take care of their blood pressure. It's something that anyone can have. And that's the thing we have to remember, because nobody wants things like this to happen to them. We always say, oh, we want to take care of ourselves so that we don't have a heart attack or that we don't have a stroke. But anyone can have a stroke. Remember that. Now, there are some people who are more likely to have one as opposed to others. So I always tell people, if you know that you are at increased risk, then why don't you do something about it, right? So we're going to go over some risk factors, and I want to hear from you how many of those risk factors that you yourself have. How many of those risk factors did the person that you know had a stroke? How many of those risk factors do they have? If you are hopping into the broadcast, welcome, welcome, welcome. Your cost of attendance to Tip Tuesday with Nikedra is to share the broadcast. We are talking about it being National Stroke Awareness Month. It is something that is near and dear to my heart. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my personal story later, so just hang in there. But we are talking about risk factors. So anybody can have a stroke. What are some risk factors for stroke? Put some risk factors in the comments, because y'all know some. You know the things that you hear people talking about. You know the reasons why you've heard certain people have a stroke. What are some of those things? What are some of the things that you have heard that people have a stroke from? Let's tease them out and see how many of those are actually true. Because I like for you all to get information so that you can learn, so that you can grow, and so you can apply it to not only your life, but help the lives of other people. So we talked about there being two types of stroke, right? Hemorrhagic, and then there's a bad or a bleeding stroke. We talked about the fact that anybody can actually have a stroke. And we also talked about the fact that you can increase your risk for having a stroke. Yes, keep them coming, keep them coming. So you're going to put what some risk factors are for strokes, because let's talk about them. There are quite a few. So when I get on here every week and I tell you about my Club 550 members, I tell you about the people in my health and wellness group, guess why I'm doing that? Because these people understand. They understand that they have risk factors. And instead of just sitting at home and saying, oh, well, I sure hope I don't have a stroke. Well, oh, I sure hope I don't have a heart attack. Guess what? They are doing something about it. They are getting in with people who want to reduce their risk as well, and they're doing something about it. So yes, I get on here and I say congratulations to these women. Yes, I get on here and I say you too have an opportunity to change your life, because guess what? They know they have some risk factors. And when you know you have risk factors, you've got to do something about it, because your outcome is much better if you do have a stroke than if you have no risk factors, okay? So we're going to talk about some risk factors for having a stroke. And I see some good ones coming in. Keep them coming. The very first one, you should know it, is high blood pressure. If you didn't see Tip Tuesday from last week, go back and look at it. High blood pressure. So high blood pressure. Lots of you have high blood pressure. Let's stop right here, because I went on a rant last week and you probably going to have to look at it again. A lot of you have high blood pressure. You know you have high blood pressure. Your provider has told you you have high blood pressure. Your mama has it. Your daddy has it. Your siblings have it. And you know you have it. And guess what? You are not doing anything about it. So when you don't do anything about it and you know you have it, guess what? It's like a ticking time bomb. You are just waiting. You are waiting for the point at which that vessel that we're talking about in your brain is just going to pop, right? You're waiting for that point by which your artery is going to get so full of pressure that it's not able to make blood flow through it. So you are just a ticking time bomb. So high blood pressure is the number one cause for a stroke. Somebody put number one in the comments. High blood pressure is the number one risk factor for a stroke. So it's people who know they have high blood pressure and you refuse to do anything about it. So high blood pressure is the number one cause for a stroke. Next, we have heart disease. So heart disease is the second most important risk factor, right? So we know heart disease is the number one killer anyway among Americans, right? So it is a setup for a stroke. Heart disease are those people who have cardiovascular disease. You've had a heart attack before. It's just a setup because cholesterol has built up into the arteries of your heart, hence giving you heart disease. That same cholesterol is building up in the arteries in your brain. And so it's going to make you have a stroke. And so if you have coronary artery disease or heart disease, guess what? Stroke is second on the list. Diabetes. So you people with high blood sugar, you're diabetic, you eat what you want, you drink what you want, you don't exercise, your blood sugar is out of control. Guess what? You're putting yourself at risk for a stroke. You're putting yourself at risk for a stroke. High blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes. Can y'all see these good? Smoking. Smoking doubles your risk. So smoking will double your risk for an ischemic stroke. So people always say, oh, it's such a hard habit to quit. But after you have a stroke and after you have a heart attack, guess what the first thing they tell you to do if they know you smoke? The first thing they tell you before you even wake up fully is you need to quit smoking. Why? Because it doubles your risk for having a stroke. Birth control pills. Women, I bet you didn't know that one. So women, birth control pills, actually hormones in general, can increase your risk for a stroke. And so if, when you go to your healthcare provider, they ask you, is your blood pressure under control? Do you smoke? They may decide that you are not a good candidate to take birth control pills because you are setting yourself up for a stroke. Now, it is not a direct correlation, so don't misunderstand me. Don't misunderstand me. If you're on birth control, it does not mean that you will have a stroke. That's not what I said. Your being on birth control and having some level of hormone balance by something external increases your risk for a stroke. Now, it increases even further if you have high blood pressure, if you're diabetic, if you smoke, if you're overweight. So it's not just the contraception in and of itself, ladies. Let's be clear. It's not that in and of itself. It is other things that factor into it. If you have a history of TIAs, so people will say, oh, I've had a mini stroke. Well, guess what a mini stroke is? A mini stroke is the calm before the storm. It is the warning. People always say you get warning before destruction. Well, guess what a mini stroke is? That's what it is. It is a warning before the actual event. So if you have a history of TIAs or mini strokes, you're almost 10 times as likely to have a full-blown stroke than somebody who has not had TIAs. Isn't that amazing? Yet, you see people who have TIAs or have mini strokes, they go right back to their normal life. They still smoke. They don't increase their activity. You still see them eating their fried chicken and whatever else they want. Blood pressure's out the roof. And they see the occurrence of these mini strokes happening more and more frequent. Well, guess what? It's a setup. It's a setup because it's telling you that your vessels are getting smaller and smaller because of the plaque that you're adding to it. The blood can't flow through it, and so you have mini strokes. High red blood cell count is another one. So some people will find themselves on an aspirin to help thin their blood. High cholesterol and lipids. So I talk all the time about having high cholesterol, trying to decrease your cholesterol, to decrease that fat that's on the vessel wall. That's why it's setting you up for a stroke. Lack of exercise. So y'all don't exercise. You don't want to wake up at 5:50 with us. You don't want to get moving, but you also don't want to have a stroke. So if you are just hopping in, it is National Stroke Awareness Month. Thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure you share the broadcast out. We're talking about risk factors for having a stroke. Remember, you're supposed to tally. You don't have to say it out loud. Just tally for yourself how many of these risk factors actually pertain to you. Because if you're somebody who hasn't had a stroke, guess what? The more of these risk factors you have, you are setting yourself up, right? You're setting yourself up. So where are we? We're here. Overweight. Are you overweight? Y'all know if you're overweight or not. You don't have to tell me. Are you overweight? That speaks for itself. Alcohol, drug use, abnormal heart rhythms. So there are some rhythms that the heart can go into and that can sometimes increase the risk for stroke just because of, it's called atrial fibrillation, but sometimes that makes the heart have some irregular beats, and so those people will sometimes be at more risk for a stroke. And also if you've had any cardiac structural problems, if you've had stent placements and things like that. So take a look at this list. Look at it closely. How many of these do you have? How many of these do you have? Because guess what? The more you have, the higher your risk. And so some weigh more than others, but let's face it, the more you have, the higher your risk. People always say, well, I wish I knew I wish I knew that I was going to have this. Wish I knew that this was going to be my outcome. Well, you're given the risk factors right here. You're given the risk factors. Now, the risk factors are just that. They're not set in stone. Risk factors are just that, because I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and where I stood in relates to the risk factors. But let's talk about risk factors that you can't change. Now, there are some things that you just can't change, right? You can't change your age, the fact that you get older every year. You can't change your race. We all know that African Americans have a much higher risk for death and disability from a stroke. So stroke is the number one cause of disability in the United States. Number one cause of disability in the United States is somebody having a stroke. Again, African Americans are at higher risk. Gender. Guess what? Do you think more men or women are likely to have a stroke? Do you think more men or women are more likely to have a stroke? Based on the risk factors that you saw, what do you think? Do you think men are more likely to have a stroke or women are more likely to have a stroke? Let me know in the comments. Y'all know I'm on my lunch, so you got to move quickly because I got to get moving here. Let me know, do you think men or women are more likely to have a stroke based on some of the risk factors that we've seen? Again, if you are just hopping into the broadcast, I ask you to put a 1 if you actually had a stroke yourself, a 2 if you have a family member who've had a stroke, or a 3 if you know a friend, a co-worker, anybody else that's not related to and not yourself that's actually had a stroke. And the cost for attending Tip Tuesday, which I have every Tuesday at 1:35, is to share the broadcast. So it is National Stroke Awareness Month. I do my duty on Tuesday to give you all tips. You help me by sharing it out on your news feed so that I can reach as many people as possible. I see you all saying women in the comments. Guess what? Men. Strokes occur more often in men, but more women than men will die from a stroke. So process that for a minute. So men will have a stroke and they will be disabled, or they will be bedridden, or they will be on total care. A woman is more likely to have a stroke and she is more likely to die. That is a harsh statistics, ladies, for you watching. That's a harsh statistic. Even more reason for you to get up, get active, and get moving. If you've had a prior history for a stroke, to those of you who put 1 in the comments, guess what? You just increase your risk factor for having another one just because you've had one in the past. And heredity. So my mama's in the broadcast. Your chance of having a stroke is greater if somebody in your family has had a stroke. So that's why I had y'all put 2s. If you know someone in your family that's had a stroke, you increase your risk for having a stroke if somebody in your family has had one. So my mama, she had a stroke. For those of you who don't know me, guess what? I had a stroke, 2018. So we're going to talk about acting fast before I get off of here. Who knows what FAST is? F-A.S.T. You should have heard me talk about this before. I'm probably going to do a fair amount of posting about it in this week and the rest of the month. And if you're on my Stroke by Love information page, you see information about FAST all the time. What is FAST? What is FAST? The whole purpose for National Stroke Awareness Month is to make sure that you can save a life. So if you know somebody who you think is having a stroke, the whole goal is to save a life, right? And so my life, I'm here today. I'm talking to you Tip Tuesday because somebody acted fast, right? So let's talk about fast. The first one is face. You see if the person has a facial droop or if their mouth is lopsided. A is for arms. So you want to ask them to hold their arms out. You want to ask them to hold their arms straight out. See if there's a drift in one side or the other. S, ask them to talk. See if their speech is slurred. And T is time. So you want to call 911. Time is absolutely of the essence. So if you don't learn anything else, I want you to know two things. One, anybody can have a stroke. And FAST. FAST is face, it's arm, it's speech, and it is time. So you don't have time to delay. You have to act fast. I want you all to remember that. If you don't remember anything else, make sure you share out the broadcast. So let's talk about me for just a second. Hey, Kevin, you came in just in time because I'm going to talk a little bit about me. So let's talk about me for just a second. So if you are tuning in, it is National Stroke Awareness Month. So I'm talking a little bit about strokes, why it's important for you all to know if somebody around you has had a stroke. Men are more likely than women to have a stroke, but women are more likely to die. No, you did not win, Kevin. No, you did not win. So, about me. So, 40 years old. We just talked about a whole list of risk factors, right? 40 years old. I am a healthcare provider. I had no risk factors. All those risk factors we went over, none of them. I didn't have high blood pressure or modifiable risk factors. Let me say that. I didn't have high blood pressure. I'm not diabetic. I wasn't overweight. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I exercise regularly. I didn't have a history of many strokes. I didn't have any abnormal heart rhythms. None of that. But guess what? I did have a family history. So I told you all a little while ago, my mom. So my mom actually had a stroke as well at a relatively young age. And one day, I had the worst headache of my life. And so it's this headache that I'm always asking my patients about when they come in and complain of headache. Is it the worst headache of your life? Right? So I had the worst headache of my life. Completely normal day. Woke up that day just like normal. Actually went to church. Was in church. Some of you all have heard this story before. Was in church in the fellowship hall and started with this headache that would not leave. So at that point, I was still aware. I disengaged, went out with other people. Long story short, somebody came to see about me. Somebody say, see about me. Somebody came to see about me because I was outside. And guess what? They recognized that my face was drooped. They recognized that I was having trouble speaking. They recognized that I was unable to move one side of my arm, my body, so my left arm was weak. And guess what? They didn't waste any time. They called 911 immediately, right? Immediately. So I want to tell you all that I cannot express to you enough the importance of calling 911. So she could have put me in her car, right? Y'all know how we do. Oh, let me take you to the hospital because I don't want to get an ambulance bill. No. She called 911 and ambulance came. I was airlifted, thank God, to the nearest stroke center, which was about 45 minutes away. But this is time that was saved. This is what I can't impress upon you enough. You don't have time to put people in your car. Let the ambulance come. If they feel the need, they're going to call Life Flight. Life Flight is going to take you to where you need to go. From the time I presented with symptoms to the time I got to the hospital, you only get 2 hours, y'all. You only get 2 hours. I remember nothing. I remember her finding me, realizing something was wrong. I heard her saying 911. She was calling 911. The next time I woke up, I was in the ER, getting ready to have surgery. So I remember nothing about any of that episode. But what I do know is that my recovery, which we're going to talk about next week, we're going to talk about symptoms. We're going to talk about how to diagnose. We're going to talk about some prevention. And we're going to talk about life after a stroke. Because many of you know people who are living life, self-included, after a stroke. Many of you look at me and you say, oh, I'd never know that you've actually had a stroke. But it's true. And there is life after a stroke. You do have some things that you might have to modify. You have some things that you aren't able to do as well as you could before. But guess what? There is life after a stroke. Many of you are taking care of loved ones. It may be you yourself. It may be your patients. It may be anybody. We just talked about the increased risk of having a stroke. But there is life after a stroke. However, my main goal is to make sure that you, yes, you, you with high blood pressure, you who's overweight, you who won't control your diabetes. My main goal is to make sure that you who have these risk factors and you know it, you make sure that you are stepping to your next level of health. So that's why I'm always congratulating the ladies who wake up with me early. They wake up at 5:50. Y'all probably are so tired of hearing me talk about it, but I don't take it lightly because those are the women who have decided that, you know what? I don't want to be a statistic. You know what? I don't want to be in the number. You know what? I don't want to be on the piece of paper that she's talking about. And you know what? I may not have such a good outcome as she has, right? So everybody's outcome is not the same. You can't predict anybody's outcome. It took me 4 months before I was able to return to work. Some people are never able to return to work. We just said it's the leading cause of disability, stroke. And so because of that, my main effort is to make sure that everybody understands, one, that anybody can have a stroke, and two, you have to act fast. Now, as much knowledge as I had, I wasn't able to tell that I myself was having a stroke. So I had to educate people around me. And so thankfully, I was around people who knew about F.A.S.T. They knew about the face, they knew about the arm, they knew about the speech, and they knew to call 911. So I was around people who knew about F.A.S.T. So if you get this broadcast and you're listening to me talk about it, but you don't share it, guess what? It's not going to be helpful if somebody finds you having a stroke, because 9 times out of 10, you can't call for help yourself. So that's why we have to make sure we're sharing the broadcast out. We are pushing this out on our news feed. If you are just hopping in, you're going to have to go and watch the replay, because guess what? My time is up for this week. So next week, I'm going to talk to you more about stroke. It is National Stroke Awareness Month. It's near and dear to my heart. It should be near and dear to you. So many people in our communities, so many people in our churches, so many people that we know and love are affected by strokes. Many of them live. Many of them have lives afterwards. Some of you are caregivers. Some of you are caretakers. And so we just have to do our part by making sure we can decrease risk factors for those of you who haven't already had a stroke, and that we can care for those who continue to live and thrive afterwards. You got it? All right, thumbs up, hearts in the comments. I love, 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 love y'all. Thank you for tuning in on Tip Tuesday. I'm going to see you back next week. We're going to finish this conversation about stroke. If you have questions, make sure you put those in the comments so that other people can see what our conversation is about. Make sure you love on somebody this week, and make sure y'all stay good. So good day, good people. I'm going to see y'all next time. Love y'all.